They won't always say it out loud, but women know it when they see it. Weakness, insecurity, a man who's present in body but absent in spirit. And here's the truth about weakness. It's not about muscles. It's not about money. It's not even about how you look. It's about your presence, your energy, your mindset. And when a man lacks certain qualities, women lose respect, then they lose interest. In this video, I'm going to break down 7 traits women secretly hate in men. 7 signs of a weak man. And the last one, it's the most important because it's the hardest to detect and the easiest to justify. Stick around till the end. It might change how you show up in every relationship you'll ever have. Let's begin. 1. The approval addict. There's a certain kind of man who thinks he's being kind, but what he's really doing is slowly erasing himself. You've seen him. Maybe you've even been him. He never disagrees. He laughs at jokes that insult him. He says yes when every bone in his body wants to say no. Why? Because the idea of someone, especially a woman, being upset with him is unbearable. He'll betray his own values, ignore his own needs, and shapeshift into whatever version of himself gets the most smiles. He's not being nice. He's addicted to approval, and women can smell it a mile away. At first, it might seem sweet, harmless, even charming, but it doesn't take long for it to feel suffocating, because deep down, every woman knows, if a man needs her approval to feel like a man, he'll never stand up to her when it counts. He won't protect her. He won't challenge her. He won't lead her. And most importantly, he won't respect himself. And if a man can't respect himself, no woman can either. The approval addict becomes dangerous in subtle ways. Because when being liked is more important than being honest, he starts hiding things. Little lies to avoid conflict. Half-truths to keep the peace. Smiles that cover up resentment. And eventually that mask cracks. And what's underneath is someone she doesn't even recognize. You might think women want a man who agrees with everything they say, but they don't. They want truth. They want clarity. They want a man who says, I respect you, but I won't lose myself to keep you. That's what real strength looks like. So if you're the guy constantly chasing approval, ask yourself, what are you so afraid of? That someone won't like you? That they'll leave? Let them. Because the moment you stop needing approval to feel whole, is the moment you actually become a man worth respecting. And that's someone no one wants to leave. Trait number 2, the emotional boy. There's a moment every woman dreads. The moment she realizes she's dating someone who looks like a man, but emotionally he's still a boy. You'll see it when conflict shows up. She brings up something that hurt her, and he shuts down. Or worse, he turns it around. Suddenly he's the victim. He had a rough day. He didn't mean it like that. And just like that, she's comforting the person who hurt her. This isn't emotional maturity. It's emotional manipulation. The emotional boy doesn't argue, he sulks. He doesn't take accountability. He disappears for days until she's too exhausted to care. He gives the silent treatment, slams doors, and guilt trips her into submission. And when he finally speaks, it's not with clarity, it's with control. Women don't want to parent their partner, but that's what this man turns them into. A mother figure, a therapist, a babysitter for his inner child. Let's be clear, there is nothing wrong with feeling deeply. In fact, true strength includes emotional intelligence. But emotional intelligence doesn't mean unleashing your rage or spiraling every time something hurts. It means being able to hold those feelings without making them everyone else's burden. A man who can't regulate himself will always demand that others do it for him. And eventually, she realizes she's not in a partnership. She's in emotional babysitting duty. And that, right there, is when attraction dies. Because women don't want perfection, but they do want stability. They want a man who can be angry without becoming cruel, sad without becoming withdrawn, vulnerable without being volatile. There's nothing more magnetic than a man who can feel everything, but stay centered. A man who can say, yes, I'm hurt, but I won't punish you for it. A man who knows that being grounded isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about owning it. She wants to lean into you, not tiptoe around you. So if you want to be respected and truly loved, don't just grow up in age. Grow up emotionally, because the world is full of boys who never learned to hold their own heart and just ended up breaking everyone else's. 3. The passive dreamer. She fell for the vision. The way his eyes lit up when he talked about his dreams. The plans. The passion. The promise of what could be. He said he was going to launch that business. He was thinking about getting in shape. He had ideas, goals, a vision board filled with a future he hadn't built yet. And for a while that was enough. But weeks became months. Months became years. And all the passion turned into empty promises. Because he never moved. He talked. He imagined. He manifested. But he didn't act. And here's the brutal truth. Women get tired of believing in a man who refuses to believe in himself enough to move. Ambition without action is just noise. And noise doesn't build anything. It might sound exciting at first, even charming. But eventually, the silence between effort and excuses becomes deafening. And women stop hearing your words because they start seeing your patterns. The passive dreamer isn't lazy. He's just addicted to potential. He loves the idea of success more than the work it takes to reach it. He wants the reward without the discipline. He talks about leveling up, but avoids every uncomfortable step that would get him there. And what happens next? She becomes the one pushing the vision forward. She reminds him, encourages him, motivates him. She becomes the fuel for a fire that he won't even light. And resentment builds. Because no woman wants to be the only adult in the relationship. She doesn't want to date a dependent. She wants to partner with a man who moves, even if he's scared, even if he fails. The most attractive men aren't perfect. They're in motion. They say what they're going to do, and then they do it. Or at least they try. They take the hit, learn, adjust. But they don't stand still and expect love to wait. So if you're the man who's always about to, thinking of, planning on, stop and start. Because women don't fall out of love with your dreams. They fall out of love with your delay. Don't just talk about becoming him. Become him. 4. The weak boundary man. He says he's just easygoing, that he doesn't like conflict. But watch closely and you'll see something else. She interrupts him, disrespects him, criticizes him in public, flirts with other men in front of him, tells him how to dress, how to speak, what to do, and he just smiles. Not because he's chill, but because he's scared. Scared of losing her. Scared of looking too much. Scared of being alone. So he bites his tongue, shrinks himself, and pretends everything's fine. Until one day it isn't. See, the weak boundary man doesn't say no. He doesn't speak up when something crosses the line. He lets disrespect slide again and again, thinking that by avoiding conflict, he's keeping the peace. But here's the truth. There is no peace without boundaries. What you allow is what will continue. And the more you allow, the more she tests. Not because she's cruel, but because respect is built through resistance. Women don't trust the man who folds under pressure. They don't admire the one who can be controlled. They might tolerate him, but they won't crave him. Because deep down, every woman wants to know, can you lead? Can you hold your ground? Can you protect your values, even when it's uncomfortable? If the answer is no, her attraction will die a slow, silent death. She might not say it. She might still sleep next to you. But something changes when a woman stops respecting a man. Her softness fades. Her eyes go dim. Her voice becomes colder. And one day, you'll wake up wondering why she's pulling away, without realizing she's been slipping through the cracks of your silence for months. A real man doesn't need to shout to set boundaries. He doesn't need to be aggressive or controlling. He just calmly says, "That doesn't work for me," and then backs it up with action. That's strength. And strength is what earns respect. So if you're tired of being the nice guy who gets overlooked, walked on, and quietly resented, stop avoiding confrontation. Start confronting yourself. Because no woman can love a man she doesn't respect. 5. The performer. He walks into the room like a one-man show. Every sentence is a pitch. Every conversation feels like a resume. He's always got a story, a name drop, a flex tucked in his back pocket. At first, it's entertaining, even impressive. But stay long enough, and it starts to feel hollow. Because behind every joke, every humble brag, every performance, is a man begging to be seen. The performer doesn't just want attention. He needs it. His self-worth is built on how others respond to him. He'll talk about the car, the watch, the crypto, the crazy parties. anything to look like he has it all together. But deep down, he's terrified you'll see the cracks, that underneath the act, he's not enough. And here's the twist women instinctively know. The man who needs to prove he's strong isn't. Real strength is quiet. It doesn't posture. It doesn't flex. It's the man in the room who doesn't speak unless he has something worth saying. The one who doesn't need everyone to like him, who doesn't collapse if no one claps. That man, he's magnetic, because confidence doesn't scream. It whispers. It shows up in stillness, in grounded energy, in presence that says, "I'm enough without your applause." The performer thinks he's impressing her, but she's reading him in silence, and what she sees is insecurity with a mask on. And the mask always slips. Maybe it's when he gets ignored for 5 minutes and starts spiraling, or when someone else enters the room and he suddenly tries to outshine them, or when she doesn't react with wide-eyed amazement and he gets defensive, even cold. Because the validation isn't just a bonus, it's his fuel. And here's the danger. If you need applause to breathe, you'll always be performing and never really living. You can't build intimacy when you're stuck on a stage. So if you're always trying to prove your value, stop. Strip off the costume. Let her meet the man, not the mask. Because in the end, she doesn't want the act. She wants authenticity, and that's something the strongest men never have to perform for. 6. The man who hides from growth. This one is the most dangerous, because he doesn't look like a problem at first. He's stable, comfortable, familiar. He's not toxic, not loud, not cruel. But slowly he stops growing. He gets the job, the car, the woman, and thinks, that's it. I've made it. But here's the truth. What makes a man magnetic isn't what he has. It's who he's becoming. And when a man stops becoming, he starts fading. At first, she can't even put her finger on it. He's still there, still providing, still talking. But the spark, it's gone. Not because he changed, but because he didn't. He stopped reading. He stopped questioning. He stopped doing the hard internal work that keeps a man evolving emotionally, spiritually, mentally. He used to have fire in his eyes, now it's routine. He used to challenge himself, now he defends his comfort zone like it's sacred ground. And she feels it. She may not say it out loud, but the connection starts to rot. Conversations feel recycled. Passion turns to politeness. Curiosity dies. And worst of all, she starts to feel alone, even with him right there. Because when a man hides from growth, he's not just avoiding discomfort, he's abandoning potential. And a woman can't follow a man who's not going anywhere. Growth isn't a luxury. It's oxygen. It's what keeps love alive. It's what keeps you interesting, to her and to yourself. The moment you decide this is just who I am, is the moment she starts quietly asking, is this really all he'll ever be? And maybe the scariest part, that man, the one hiding from growth, will think he's doing everything right. He'll say, I never changed. I stayed loyal. I showed up. But that's the problem. You showed up as the same man you were 5 years ago. And over time, being the same becomes your downfall. So ask yourself, are you growing into someone deeper, wiser, stronger? Or are you hiding behind who you used to be, hoping that's still enough? Because eventually it won't be. 7. The oversharer. There's a kind of man who mistakes emotional dumping for vulnerability. He meets a woman, feels a little connection, and suddenly he's unraveling. Trauma stories on the first date, childhood wounds within the first hour, every insecurity, every fear, every moment he's ever been broken, laid out like a diary in flames. He thinks he's being real. He calls it being open. But what he's really doing is bleeding on someone who didn't ask to be his bandage. You see, there's a difference between emotional honesty and emotional recklessness. Women don't feel safe with a man who collapses emotionally the second he feels seen. They want depth, but not instability. Intimacy, not immaturity. The oversharer is usually a man who never learned boundaries. He believes that being liked depends on how much of his pain he can hand over. But instead of connection, he creates pressure. Instead of bonding, he creates burden. And here's the harsh truth. Women may feel sympathy, but they lose attraction. Not because they're heartless, but because they're wired to seek strength. A man who uses vulnerability to fast-track intimacy isn't leading from his core. He's begging to be understood. And that's not connection. That's emotional neediness in disguise. There's power in knowing when to share and when to hold. In knowing how to reveal your soul without pouring it out all at once. Because mystery isn't manipulation, it's mastery. It's the ability to say, here I am, but only those who earn it get all of me. Women don't need you to be a stone wall, but they do need you to be rooted, to have emotional gravity, to carry your story without collapsing under it, or throwing it at their feet hoping they'll piece it back together. Be vulnerable, yes, but be selective, be grounded. Let your scars speak wisdom, not desperation. Because when you reveal everything too soon, what you're really saying is, please validate me. And that's not strength. That's exposure without protection. And no woman wants to mother the man she's trying to admire. I'll leave you with this. The truth. Strength isn't loud. Confidence isn't showy. And being a man isn't about dominance, it's about presence. Women don't want perfect. They want real, rooted, clear, awake. If you saw yourself in any of these, don't panic. Awareness is the first step toward power. Change it, own it, grow through it, and above all, become the man who doesn't need to prove anything, because who he is already speaks volumes.